Alright, so in this video, we're going to talk about the life cycle of a Java application, JavaFX application. Now, this concept is very important because it allows us to know what are the steps, what are the life cycle steps that a JavaFX goes through from the moment we hit run to the moment we exit the application. Now, the reason why this is also important because it will give us a roadmap on how we write our logic in our application. Okay, so for instance, if you're writing an application that needs to go out and fetch data, you would know, for instance, when in the life cycle of the application you should do certain things, such as initializing your variables or even getting rid of all the data before the application shuts down. So that's a very important concept. It's a very simple, but a very important one. So I went ahead and created a new project here. I called it life cycle, and then what I did, I just put here a boilerplate of our stage, right? So first thing I said primary stage and set it to life cycle, the title, and I create a root here, a flow pane. You've seen this before, and I make sure that is vertically oriented, and I have a horizontal gap of 5 and horizontal and vertical gap of 5 as well. Make sure that the alignment is center, so everything will be in the center of the screen. And then I created a scene here. Of course, in the scene we have to pass the root we just created and then the width and height of our scene. Okay, and then I invoke the primary stage again and set it the scene that we just created, and of course I went ahead and show. Right, so go ahead and create your own project and create an empty scene as we see here, an empty stage. Now if we save this and give it a run, we should see an empty, we should see here an empty stage. Very nicely done. Okay, so I'm going to stop. The Java application lifecycle comprises of 3 main functions, 3 main methods. The first one we will have to override is called the init. So the moment you start typing init, so there it is, init there, you see it comes from our parent class, which is application. You will notice it says here override. Okay, and of course we're calling this super init so that everything is initialized as needed. Now here I'm going to see out. I'm going to print here, say init begins. I'm going to copy this because we'll need in a second here, and then the start is the one that we are familiar with. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just paste in this out here, system out. I'm going to say start begins, and the last one we're going to look into is the stop. Obviously this will be called when the application stops or when we exit out of our application. So I'm going to make sure here I say stop invoked. Maybe that'll be the best way to put it. All right, I'm going to save this again and give another run. All right, so right away you notice that the init begins, meaning the first function that was called was this one here, and then it went and says start begins, which means then after we initialize, the init was called. Init, by the way, stands for initialization or initialize. We then called the start method. Okay, so that is the hierarchy, that is the life cycle here. But now if I go ahead and get rid of it, you notice that the stop was indeed invoked because we exit out of our application. Knowing this information, you will have a better understanding on how our application is run. What are the steps, the life cycle that the application goes through from creation, from the time we play, right, we run it, to the time we exit out of it. Knowing this information also, as I mentioned before, allows us, for instance, if you have a bigger application, you have a lot of things going on, you have a lot of nodes or a lot of controls, you have maybe a few stages here and there, so you want to be able to know when it's time to get rid of all of that data, of all of that information, so that your application can exit gracefully, right? Another example would be if you have a heavy networking application, meaning that it goes and fetches data from the internet. You want to make sure that once you're leaving the application, in this case will be the stop, you want to get rid of all of those connections, all of those classes, and so that you don't have memory leaks. Okay, so it allows you to know exactly what to do, where to write the logic that you need to make your applications more efficient. Perfect. So now you've learned about the JavaFX application lifecycle. And of course, as we progress in our studies here, we will look into those more closely. All right, I'll see you next.